Hello guys and gals, this is Pixeled1 from Reddit. I also go by Spectator6 in the official EFT forums. Some of you all may recognize me a little bit. In the past I've helped kick off some great discussions surrounding things like a deep dive into EFT's recoil, aiming mechanics, medical systems, blah blah blah. Well, today I'd like to take a look at EFT's movement mechanics. There's a lot of talk going on surrounding the 80-80 strafe spamming and how an inertia or momentum system may help prevent that pinball effect that we see of players kind of bouncing around the screen like maniacs. Now, on the face of it, this seems like kind of a bit of a no-brainer, like it would be an easy thing to fix. But I suspect that EFT may have some unique things going on underneath the hood that make it a bit more complicated for BSG to tackle. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys comparisons between EFT and a bunch of different other first-person shooter games as a way to kind of just get some discussion going and also shed some light on, from a layman's perspective, kind of what may be going on behind the scenes. So let's dig in and hope you enjoy. Now, for those who've been playing games, first-person shooters for a long time, you may have some experience with a bunch of different ways of handling the player's perspective. I kind of grouped these into three different categories. So it's good to talk about this in terms of two different perspectives. One is the first-person perspective. This is what the player himself actually sees when he's actually playing the game. The other is kind of the third-person perspective. This is what other players see when they look at you playing. And the vast majority of first-person shooters, the first-person perspective tends to be kind of this floaty camera, for lack of a better description, where as the player you can look down, look around, and you don't see your feet, you don't see your legs or anything. You just seem like you're floating in space. Whereas other players who are looking at you, they'll see your actual player model. They'll see how you're standing, how you look, all the different animations that are involved when you sidestep, when you go forward, when you go backward. All these things are kind of separated out to where the first person is kind of separate from the third person. A lot of games, and like I said, tons of games follow this. This would be like Counter-Strike, Overwatch, Apex, the list goes on and on and on. Now, another approach that has been used kind of off and on to more or less degree is what I'll call kind of a fake first-person, third-person view, where what they do is the first-person perspective is still this kind of amorphous floating camera, but what they do is they kind of layer on onto that view some extra models and animations that make it seem like to the player that he's actually seeing his third-person character model, but really he's not. What people from the outside looking at him will see is different from what he actually sees himself. And I have some footage here to show. Squad is a good example of this. I have some footage here to kind of show how that rigging is set up and kind of how they do a really good job of faking it, right? And lastly, the other category of this is what I'll call the true first-person, third-person perspective. Now, this is one that is not used very often. For numerous reasons, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But to my knowledge, I mean, there's probably some more, but the first that come to mind for me are ARMA, the ARMA series, and Escape from Tarkov. This is what I'll call a true first-person, third-person view, where the camera is literally kind of grafted onto and married at the hip to the actual third-person animations, character animations. This can make things feel very authentic, but it also comes with it a lot of drawbacks, and I don't know for sure, but I suspect that what we're seeing in EFT are kind of the more nitty-gritty details of the drawbacks of having this true first-person, third-person, and why it makes something like an inertia system much more complicated to implement. Now, if we take a look at Squad. And again, I'm not doing this to knock at Squad or badmouth Squad or anything. I'm just doing it to kind of educate us on the different ways this is done. If you look down with your camera, you'll notice as you turn, your character's feet kind of slide around the map, right? They're not really grounded. They're allowed to kind of drift and float a little bit. This is one of the telltale signs you can see when these types of kind of tricks and fakes are going on. You can also see it more prominently whenever you, let's say you're aiming down your sights or something, or just walking around. As your character takes different positions and you look down, you get a sense that your character's arms and upper torso are kind of this separate moving piece, and that the legs are kind of independent of this. And we'll see this. Yep, there's a good view. And the biggest way of seeing this would be in this example here, where I was been able to kind of contort the camera, contort the character's head to be in such a way where it shows kind of the sausage being made, the ugly sausage being made, but in the background. So here's what that looks like. Clearly, the bottom half of the character is separate from the top, and this is okay. Again, it's very realistic. It can be very convincing, but I want you to understand this is more of an addition to the traditional floating mechanic than it is something more complicated and complex and involved, something like compared to EFT. And I just gotta say, I mean, I've been doing jazzercise with Richard Simmons with the knee-high socks and everything, leotards, the whole setup. I've been doing that stuff for decades, and even I can't achieve this level of flexibility. Now, as we take a look at Tarkov, I want to show first of all that I think that the actual movement pace, the standard movement pace, is fairly good. I mean, to me, it's fairly accurate. I don't see. I mean, some of the speeds can get pretty unrealistic, but by and large, it feels pretty good. And I'm just showing this here. This is me in the hideout. I've got a ton of gear on, so I'm super heavy. Obviously, this is very slow. But even as a slow pace, to me, this feels reasonable. Now, what I'm showing next here is what I'm going to call an impulse movement. Again, just layman's terms, I know what it was really called. And this would be the smallest amount that the character is able to move. So this is if you just quickly press and release a key as quick as you can. This is the smallest amount of movement that I can reliably get EFT to move my character. And this is very important, as we'll see moving forward. Now, what I'm showing here is, because EFT is kind of really uses the third-person animations as kind of as its go-to de facto standard. It's uses the third-person animations as what seems like kind of like its single source of truth. What you can kind of do here is you can see 3 impulses get you so far. If you also, within those impulses, time out another key press, kind of at the top of the animation set, you'll see that you can get the character to slide. And these, you can kind of slide them 3 slides, goes a lot further across the screen than just 3 separate impulses. That's kind of what I'm trying to show. And this also comes into play, I mean, you see here, when you start going spastic and just mashing different keys and different things, you can see the game seems to have a hard time placing the character. It doesn't really know where it kind of wants to be. And I suspect this has something to do with kind of the inconsistencies that we feel when fighting other players who are implementing this 80-80 strafe spamming. Is because the characters are able to literally kind of skip and jump across the floor, it makes there's not a consistent transition from one position to the next. It makes hitting them kind of like you're shooting at Neo from the Matrix or something like that. Okay, and here we are again. This time I have virtually nothing on. It's a very light, almost naked. And you'll see that while the movement is a lot faster, side to side, just normal gait, because of that speed, in order to catch that kind of window in the animation loop to where you can make him shuffle, that window is a lot narrower. So it's harder to get that same effect, I found, whenever you are lightly geared. So believe it or not, having a big kind of sluggish lumbering character gives you more time to catch that window. And that's really all I'm showing here. we can see at one point, yeah, I start doing I go crazy on the controls, and just to show that, again, all these skips, it's really hard for the game to accurately place the character. And one of the complications from this kind of true first-person, third-person link is what we've all seen with Tarkov is it creates some jarring transitions. So if you look at something like this, you'll see that the leans and the side steps are very jittery and jolty, right? They're not smooth at all like you see in other first-person shooters. And again, I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect this is because the camera is directly tied to those third-person animations. As a side note, I suspect also that because the third-person animations tend to drive the whole story with Tarkov, that's part of what makes it more of a difficult nut to crack when it comes to altering the stability of the player's firing platform when he's sidestepping. Because you'll see it's a fairly generic movement. The gun pivots a little bit and offsets, and it kind of floats around this certain area. And again, to make this be more true to life, because everything in Tarkov, bullets come from the barrel, the angle of the gun, yada yada yada. In order to make this more believable, the sway mechanic will have to be modified. And because the sway mechanic is not some individually separated unit from an animation standpoint, they'd have to go through and find a way to dynamically alter, the strafing animations for the character. More if you're wearing more gear, less gear if you're encumbered, blah blah blah. All these things will have to have this way to adjust and create a fluid animation set from that. Which again, from the limited familiarity and understanding I have, that seems to be a very tall order. There's a reason why many games do not go this route. It's because it adds a bunch of complexity into the mix. And another example of showing how the third person is very much closely linked to the first person. If you look at, we can show this with scoping in. You'll see that all of the scope sway, all the weapon sway, again ties back to the actual player model itself. And you'll see that as the character gets tired and winded, those shakes that we are so common to seeing in other games are actually a little bit more complex in EFT because, again, they're being translated through an entire player model. Okay, and here we are with Valorant. What's interesting to note here is, again, if you compare it to what you just saw with Escape from Tarkov, you'll see that there's a lot more fine control with the keyboard presses. Again, I'm just the same rate, bing, 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 just quickly tapping the keys. And there's a lot more fine-grained control. You can move the character in small, little bitty increments. And here's where I'm showing here a sense of momentum. You'll see that there is a slow and gradual speed up to the max walking speed or running speed, whatever it is. And how this plays out, you can a good way to see this in action is if you go from walking straight left to immediately down, or to the side and immediately up, or whatever. And what you'll see is if there is a sense of momentum or inertia in the game, you'll start seeing it's almost like my character's painting more of an oval shape, kind of a curved shape on the screen. This is because the character just gradually blends in to other directions, not just an immediate jump from one to the other. So I found in looking at this, for me, I found that this is a good way to get a sense of how much inertia is present in the game. Just to look at the types of shapes you can draw with your character, if that makes sense. And something I actually also like about Valorant's movement is the jumping. You can see here there's a noticeable kind of like a lag or delay after the character lands on a jump, to where it's almost that inertia system. It's almost like he kind of slows his steps a little bit, and it takes a little moment for him to get back to normal movement patterns. I think that's conveyed really well, the sense of screen shake and camera shake and everything, and the sound. I think it's a very, very crisp sensation for the player. Okay, and here we have Overwatch. I'm deliberately picking one of the faster characters here just to show it. And you'll see, again, compared to Valorant, it's a little bit bigger on the kind of the pulses. If you're just pulsing your keys, it's the movement's a little bit bigger, but still considerably smaller than what you'll find in Tarkov. And here's me kind of drawing a bunch of different shapes. You can see there's a slight curve in the shape, but not. So there's a small bit, maybe a small bit of whatever you want to call it, inertia or blending. But you'll see on these side steps going from left to right, it is it's pretty much immediate. But the one thing I'm unable to do here is I'm unable to get the character to skip, and that's one of the main things I want to highlight on Tarkov is that the player is able to kind of in some ways skip frames or skip positions. So whereas in here she may be fast, the character may be fast, but at least it's a kind of an even and consistent path, not a kind of a jagged, chopped up path from one position to the next. Okay, and here we are with Squad. And I have to say, Squad has probably one of my favorite movement mechanic sets. And here I am again showing the nudges. Just quick impulse presses. You can see you can have really, really fine and smooth control over the character's position. And here I am just showing kind of gait speeds, walking speeds. You'll notice that backwards is slower than forwards. And same thing, I'm unable to kind of teleport my character. It's just a smooth and even transition. And even from side to side. Side to side is a little bit slower than forward. The other thing I want to note here, and as you probably noticed in Valorant and even Overwatch, one of the obvious things is that in games like Tarkov and Squad, you can see your feet. And you can get this, you have this here obviously in Squad as well. One of the things, I'm not a programmer in this, and here I am drawing shapes again. You can see there is more of a curve with Squad, which tends to kind of a gradual build-up, more of an inertia momentum type system at play. And to me, I think this feels really, really good. It feels very reasonable, and the character feels grounded. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I felt like I've been repeatedly jiggle peeked by players in Squad like I do in Tarkov. They might do some leaning, right? Some leaning here and there, quick leans in and out, which is fairly realistic. It's just the quick, super quick sidestepping that I think Squad is able to avoid. Okay, and here we have Alien Isolation. It's interesting to see here their impulse movements, how far the character goes in its smallest increments. There's a very slight amount of lag, very, very small. And one of the reasons I chose something like this to showcase is because of how important player position is in the game. The player needs to be able to feel grounded and know where he's at, while also being very much in control to avoid being spotted by the alien and stuff like that. Okay, and here we are with ARMA 2. I think it's interesting to kind of end with this one after all those other kind of floaty first-person cameras. Here we have one that is like Tarkov, tied again kind of as a true third-person, first-person. And you'll see a lot of similarities between it and Tarkov in the sense that kind of some of the hurdles it has to overcome. It still kind of has, it's not very smooth. It allows for the sliding steps, the jump steps going forward are pretty significant. Backward, it's still there, but it's very, very small. And you'll see kind of the way they implemented a momentum is they started off with maybe one step of a walk that transitions immediately into a run. Yeah. And again, if you can go back and compare that to something like we saw in Squad or even Valorant, how it was more of a gradual and smooth sense of momentum and inertia, and also provided a very kind of steady and consistent placement for the character. That's very different from what we see here. And you'll see here again kind of the jerky and jolty camera positions when I do a crouch. Again, I think that's because of how it's tied to the third-person animation. So unless the third-person animation is very, very meticulous, it can cause these weird-looking aberrations, or whatever you want to call it. So where does that leave us? Well, I think it's good to keep in mind that the application of momentum is not something that's unique to the first-person genre by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. You can look at tons and tons of different genres, including platformers, and you'll see that many times there they require even more precise player controls and feedback and responsiveness, and they pull it off quite well. Now, granted, those are 2D side scrollers, but again, the ideas and the concepts are very much the same. So I have no doubt that BSG is working tirelessly to resolve this, that they would like to resolve it. They're a bunch of tough cookies, we got to give them that. They've built one hell of a game in the Unity engine, and I think we just got to be patient, understanding, and the knowledge that this could be an issue that is so deeply ingrained with other systems within the game that it's not as easy as something like, well, gosh, Super Meat Boy can do it, why can't Tarkov? Well, as I hope I've shown here, it could be more complex than that, than what initially meets the eye. So, any thoughts, feedback, or improvements? Let me know. Let's get a good discussion going. I tried the video approach. If I'm honest with you, it takes a lot longer than I thought to edit the clips, put them together, do voiceovers and stuff. Full-time job, family man, all that kind of stuff. I'll probably stick to my text, but who knows? If you guys like it a whole bunch, this is something I could definitely get better at and improve as time goes on. So take care, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.